In this video, I'm going to take you through the entire story of the Garten of BanBan series, from the very beginning in BanBan 1 all the way to the latest events in BanBan 0. Whether you're new to the series or just need a refresher, this is the perfect way to catch up on everything that has happened so far. Feel free to leave this video playing in the background while you're working or even before you go to bed. So let's dive deep into the full story of Garten of BanBan. So BanBan 1 game is start. The player enters BanBan's kindergarten, a place that used to be full of children but is now completely empty. Goal is simple: find their missing child, who was taken by Stinger Flynn during Bring a Friend Day event. From the very beginning, the kindergarten feels strange. The hallways are dark and quiet, the lights flicker, and it feels like something is watching. As the player explores the outer sector, they quickly realize they are not alone. After solving some puzzles, the player reaches the ball pit. Here, they have to complete a puzzle called What Was My Color? They need to match the right colors to different characters in the kindergarten. It seems easy, but the pressure builds as they do it. Just when they finish, Opala Bird returns. This time, she's riding a chairlift straight toward them. There's no more hiding. She is coming directly at them. She slowly steps off the lift and begins to move toward the player. When she finally attacks, there are only seconds to react. The player quickly uses the drone to activate a bridge and escape. But Opala Bird doesn't stop. She immediately starts chasing them across a narrow platform. It's a high-speed race, and she is right behind them. Just before she can grab them, the player jumps to safety and presses the emergency stop button. The bridge collapses beneath Opala Bird, sending her falling into the deep pit below. She crashes against the walls as she falls, and then she disappears into the darkness. For now, the player is safe. With Opala Bird gone, the player continues exploring and finds a secret worker lift. This lift goes deeper into the kindergarten, where more answers and bigger dangers are waiting. The player steps inside, and the lift begins to descend. But suddenly, something goes wrong. A huge figure appears from the shadows. Jumbo Josh. His giant green hand grabs the side of the lift, making it shake dangerously. The player has no way to escape. Jumbo Josh climbs onto the platform, and his weight is too much. The entire lift collapses, sending both the player and Jumbo Josh falling into the darkness below. So now, BanBan 2 game is start. The player wakes up on the worker lift, which is crushing Jumbo Josh, who is unconscious and has serious injuries. The player steps out into the hub and enters the communications sector, where they hear a voice pretending to be a human security guard. This is actually BanBan, but the player doesn't know that yet. BanBan says he got locked inside the security office and needs help getting out. He opens the break room and sends the player to the maintenance room. While exploring, Nabnab suddenly runs out of the darkness and starts chasing the player. The player manages to escape by running up the stairs, and Nabnab, unable to stop in time, crashes into a wall and is knocked out. The player then rushes to the security office to free BanBan, still believing he is a guard. But when they enter, no one is inside. Instead, there is a note on the table that says, "If you read this fast enough, you might be able to escape, but I'm going to hit you very, very hard." Before the player can react, BanBan appears and knocks them out. He explains that he captured the player to use them for surgery and to take all their keycards. The player wakes up later in the medical sector, stitched up after the surgery, and trapped inside a storage room. After escaping, the player extracts the last of the Gavanium from Captain Fiddles' crew, ensuring that they are gone forever. As they leave the medical sector, they see Zolphius rising from the abyss and notice that Jumbo Josh has woken up and dragged himself away. The player enters the testing sector and comes face to face with Opala Bird, who now has scars on her face. Suddenly, Bambalina shouts, "Quick, in here!" and leads the player into her classroom. The player participates in Bambalina's strange lessons, but during the third one, they hear Slow Celine say, "Hello?" Bambalina leaves to check the noise, and the player, along with the other students, escapes the classroom. The player finds a room with Opala Bird's 6 children and carefully places them in a nearby nest. This opens a door, and Opala Bird comes out, but instead of attacking, she goes to her kids. The player takes this chance to escape, but finds themselves in a hallway blocked by Slow Celine, forcing them to play red light, green light. After this, an unknown being calls for an assembly, causing the facility to shut the doors and lock the player inside the most dangerous room in the building. BanBan appears, riding a worker lift behind reinforced glass. He explains that the assembly has been called, and all the walkways open, unleashing the monsters. enters. Jumbo Josh's hand bursts out of his door, and Banbalina runs out of hers. BanBan tells the player to run through Opola Bird's walkway, which is empty because she is with her children. The player runs, but Jumbo Josh and Banbalina chase after them. Jumbo Josh smashes through doors and windows, trying to grab the player, but he misses every time. At the end of the hallway, the player opens a roof door, tricking Banbalina into running under it. Jumbo Josh, who is simply trying to grab either one of them, slams into her, crushing her into the ground and dragging her into the darkness as she screams. The player escapes through the next door and rides a worker lift down to floor B2. So now, BanBan 3 game is start. The player reaches the last functional level of the kindergarten, the same place where everything went wrong on Bring a Friend Day. BanBan appears happy to see the player, but warns them that he cannot help face to face. He explains that he is prone to violent instincts, referencing his hellish form, and does not trust himself to resist his dangerous nature. Instead, he directs the player to the aquatic sector to speak with Stinger Flynn. However, when the player arrives, Stinger Flynn has more important matters to deal with and refuses to reason with them. Instead, he places the player into the beach dream. Inside this dream, Flynn reveals that he wants the children to see the real outside world. Meanwhile, BanBan shares information about Nob Nob, explaining that some scientists believed Nob Nob's aggression was caused by loneliness. Their solution was to create Nobnalina. BanBan, speaking as if he were Dr. Uthman Adam, explains that the procedure was interrupted during the Bring a Friend Day disaster. However, the hardest part of the process was already done. The player only needs to inject the correct Gavanium mix into Nobnalina to bring her to life. After completing the procedure, Nobnalina wakes up and escapes. The player is given a spider assembly audio tape, and BanBan instructs them to return to the aquatic sector to play the tape through the lounge speaker. When the player activates the spider assembly, Nab and Nobnalina finally meet for the first time. BanBan comments that they were supposed to be mutants, but before he can finish speaking, Stinger Flynn rises from the abyss, knocking Nab unconscious and dragging his body away. Nobnalina, panicked, runs back to Nab's room just before the door closes behind her. The player attempts to investigate Nab's disappearance, but is suddenly frozen in place by Stinger Flynn's psychic abilities. Flynn tells the player that they should have already left the kindergarten and sends them into the desert dream. After waking up, the player enters the dragon fight room, where they come face to face with Tamataki and Chamataki. The walls contain instructions on how to defeat the two-headed dragon. The player must collect 3 firework rockets and place them onto Chamataki's tongue. Each time the creature consumes a firework, it explodes inside the monster. After the 3rd explosion, the old mascot of the kindergarten collapses. The player then retrieves party hats for Mr. Kebabman. Using Mr. Kebabman, the player lures one of the Opila chicks away from the protection of Opila Bird and Tarta Bird. The player grabs the baby bird, causing Tarta Bird to jump down and chase them. However, the player quickly jumps onto Tarta Bird's back, taming it. Soon after, Opila Bird jumps down as well, following them into the next room. The player places the baby bird onto Opala's back, just as Stinger Flynn rises from the abyss, holding an unconscious BanBan. Flynn explains that BanBan has unknowingly allowed him to discover crucial information. Then, using his powers, Flynn transforms BanBan into his hellish form. Now fully transformed, BanBan wakes up and immediately begins chasing the player and the birds. They enter a testing area designed for racing Opala Bird and Tarta Bird. The player must control which bird moves forward and backward to ensure the correct one reaches the next door first. After completing the race, the player and the birds enter the monster fight area. Riding on Tarta Bird's back, the player moves through another section of the room, while Opala Bird and her baby follow closely behind. Hellish BanBan chases after them and eventually corners the player. He tells them, "You can run away, but the smell of your pancreas will always draw me to you." Just as he is about to attack, Jumbo Josh stomps into the room, shaking the ground with each step. BanBan immediately turns his attention to Josh and jumps onto him, punching him repeatedly. However, Jumbo Josh is completely unfazed. He grabs BanBan like a fly and throws him onto the floor before crushing him with his left hand. As Josh prepares to finish BanBan off with both hands, Stinger Flynn suddenly intervenes, pushing Jumbo Josh back and emerging from the shadows. Flynn attempts to put Jumbo Josh into a dream state using his stinger, but Josh dodges the attack and grabs Flynn instead. instead. Showing his incredible strength, Josh slams Flynn onto the ground with full force, causing the entire facility to shake. The impact knocks Tarta Bird off balance, sending it falling onto the concrete floor below. Seeing this, Opala Bird looks at the player, seemingly entrusting them with her child before jumping down to save Tarta Bird. The player, holding the Opala chick, proceeds to the next room, leaving behind BanBan, Jumbo Josh, Stinger Flynn, and the injured Opala Bird and Tarta Bird. As the elevator descends to floor B3, the player is left with a single message: find the kingdom, find the sheriff, and avoid Bitter Giggle. So now, BanBan 4 game is start. The player and the Opala chick arrive in a long orange hallway. As they step forward, Tamataki and Chamataki suddenly break through a door and start chasing them. The player and the Opala chick sprint through the halls, barely managing to escape when the two-headed beast gets stuck between a narrow passageway. With the immediate danger gone, the player moves forward and discovers a yellow drone remote. But before they can do anything with it, Sheriff Toadster ambushes them. The player is knocked out and dragged away to the interrogation room. When the player wakes up, they are seated at a table in front of Sheriff Toadster. He begins questioning them, asking which monsters they have encountered before. The player answers, and after gathering the information he needs, Sheriff Toadster transports them to the Queen. Queen Bouncelia recognizes that the player is searching for their child. Instead of keeping them as a prisoner, she releases them and grants them citizenship in her kingdom. She promises to help the player reunite with their children if they assist Sheriff Toadster in finding 3 missing parts needed to repair the broken elevator. As the player follows Sheriff Toadster, they meet BanBan at the edge of a massive abyss. BanBan takes Mr. Kebabman from his back and sets him down, calling out to Zolphius with the intention of offering Mr. Kebabman to him. But before anything can happen, Nabnob suddenly jumps out from the shadows and snatches Mr. Kebabman, sprinting away. BanBan immediately gives chase, and the player runs after them. Unfortunately, the player is slower than both BanBan and Nabnab, so by the time they catch up, BanBan has already cornered Nabnab behind a glass wall. The player watches helplessly as Nabnab desperately tries to fight BanBan, and at first, it seems like Nabnab is winning. But then, BanBan loses control of himself. His body mutates into his hellish form, a monstrous version of himself that Nabnab stands no chance against. Hellish BanBan unleashes a brutal attack, easily overpowering Nabnab. He viciously beats him, knocking him unconscious before hurling his limp body against a wall. BanBan then collapses onto the ground, panting heavily in a manic state. Sensing that things are only getting worse, the player quickly runs toward the Queen's throne room. But when they arrive, they find Queen Bouncelia cornered by Bitter Giggle and Kittysaurus. Bitter Giggle grins and announces that he has returned to deliver his best jokes, determined to make the Queen laugh. Queen Bouncelia, unwilling to let him succeed, leaps down from her throne, ready to defend herself. But in the process, she accidentally knocks Little Beak into a giant barrel of Gavanium. A few moments later, Little Beak emerges, but she is no longer the same. The Gavanium has transformed her into a massive monster, even bigger than Opala Bird. In rage, the mutated Little Beak immediately attacks Kittysaurus, tackling him down a flight of stairs where the two begin a fierce battle. Meanwhile, Bitter Giggle finally delivers his joke, and Queen Bouncelia struggles to contain her laughter. At first, she tries to resist, but then she suddenly bursts out laughing. The moment she laughs, she is launched backward, and the naughty ones trapped in her pouch begin escaping. A blinding purple light bursts out of her pouch, illuminating the entire room. Realizing that the situation is spiraling out of control, Sheriff Toadster and the player make a run for the elevator. Bitter Giggle, seeing his chance, immediately starts chasing after them. As they sprint through the infirmary, Sheriff Toadster remotely unlocks every single cell, creating chaos behind them. They reach the elevator just in time, and Sheriff Toadster allows Stinger Flynn to join them. As the doors close, they watch from above as the entire kingdom of Floor 4 begins to collapse beneath them. So now, BanBan 6 game is start. And yes, the developers skipped BanBan 5 for some reason, so Sheriff Toadster and the player descend onto a lower floor. And right away, Sheriff Toadster admits that whatever is happening on the floors above terrifies him. It's clear that things are getting worse, and they need to be careful. The two begin walking down a long hallway when suddenly, distant laughter echoes through the area. They reach a large, open room, but before they can react, the lights go out. In the darkness, the naughty ones begin closing in, forcing the player and Sheriff Toadster to run for their lives. The chase is intense, with the creatures right behind them, but eventually, they make it to a well-lit room where they are finally safe. Sheriff Toadster takes a moment to breathe and then explains that he took refuge on this floor after being abandoned. It's clear that he's been surviving here alone, hiding from whatever is lurking in the dark. The player then spots a series of pipes and begins climbing them to reach higher ground. As they near the top, Sheriff Toadster warns them to be careful. Looking ahead, the player sees a glowing light on a table, which seems suspiciously out of place. As they step closer, the nanny suddenly jumps out of the shadows and attacks, forcing the player into a jump scare. After respawning, the player notices that the glowing light has now been replaced with a book. When they click on it, a strange message appears. You feel strange. Something about this book is unusual, but there's no time to think about it now. Returning downstairs, the player finds Sheriff Toadster standing with Bambalina. They begin talking, and through their conversation, Sheriff Toadster starts to put some pieces together. He realizes that Bambalina's captor, along with some of the others, is not only extremely smart, but also very handsome. It's an odd observation, but there's no time to question it. Before long, they all go their separate ways, and the player moves on to restore the power. To do this, the player must navigate another dark area while staying within the safety of a drone's spotlight. The naughty ones are lurking in the shadows, and if the player steps out of the light, they will attack. Moving carefully, the player eventually reaches a power unit with a note lying next to it. The note reads, "They did not look into the face, just like Miss Mason told them to." The meaning of this is unclear, but it seems important. After inserting a key card into the slot, the white middle door opens, revealing another mysterious message inside. This time, the words read, "Life is events put in the right order." Nearby, the player also finds a videotape, adding another layer to the growing mystery. With a new light blue key card in hand, the player heads toward another door, where they finally meet Bitter Giggle for the first time in this installment. But instead of attacking, Bitter Giggle behaves strangely. He does not chase the player, but instead asks them a question. Are they gone? Bitter Giggle then walks closer, admitting that he made a mistake. He also asks if the player has found the switch to the scepter room, and politely informs them that it is inside a closet. Following his instructions, the player enters the room where Bitter Giggle was previously trapped and activates a keycard panel button. But now, they must solve a new puzzle, deciphering a code using blue chairs. The player has to place them in the correct order, or else they will have to restart the game. When the first part of the code is solved, a Lincoln green light upstairs turns on. Solving the second part causes a cobalt blue light on the lower floor to light up. After successfully completing the puzzle, the player returns to the room where Bitter Giggle was and activates a dimmer panel button. Suddenly, the entire room is plunged into darkness. But just as Bitter Giggle had warned, this was expected. The player has to act fast, pointing the lamps toward the whiteboard before the naughty ones attack. If they fail, they will be overwhelmed. Once the danger is averted, Bitter Giggle quickly tells the player to get inside for safety. But before they can do so, a loud banging comes from the door. One of the naughty ones begins mimicking BanBan's voice, trying to trick the player into opening it. But Bitter Giggle immediately warns them not to fall for it. Tension builds as the knocking continues, but after a few moments, the lights suddenly switch back on. The naughty ones, unable to withstand the brightness, disappear into the shadows once again. The player is finally safe, at least for now. So using the help of the drone light, the player moves forward and finally meets Sheriff Toadster again, who is standing with Bambalina. They exchange a few words, but before they can react, a sudden attack happens. Bambalina is grabbed by the leg and dragged into the darkness by naughty ones. Sheriff Toadster immediately runs after him, determined to help, but after that, he is never seen again for the rest of the game. The player continues moving forward. They encounter Stinger Flynn, who has been waiting for them. They speak with Stinger Flynn for a few moments, discussing the situation at hand and what must be done next. The player then proceeds to the potentiality sector, where they must activate more switches to open the next door. Along the way, the player stumbles upon two experimental jesters. However, before anything can be done, both of them suddenly fall into the void and die. Moving further, the player discovers yet another experiment, this time a jester who is talking to himself. His words are unclear, but something about his presence feels unsettling. Finally, the player meets BanBan again. This time, BanBan reveals some very important information, hinting at deeper secrets within the facility. Before continuing forward, the player must solve a difficult puzzle involving the Kebab Man. After solving it, they finally come face to face with Sir Dadadoo for the first time in the game. Without hesitation, Sir Dadadoo launches an attack on BanBan. Before he can turn to attack the player as well, Bitter Giggle steps in, saving both the player and BanBan from being hit. The fight is intense, but it leads directly into the final part of BanBan 6, which is the most important part of the entire series so far. After activating all 4 buttons, BanBan, the player, and Bittergiggle enter the scepter room. Just as they step inside, Nabnab suddenly arrives and presses a button to open a mysterious chest. Inside, they discover the scepter, but something is wrong. It's missing a piece. They quickly realize that the surgeon took the missing piece and fled after the naughty ones escaped. Before they can react, Sir Dadadoo enters the room with his army of leeches following behind him. BanBan, thinking fast, tries a different approach. Instead of fighting, he pretends to be friendly toward Nabnab, acting as though he wants to be allies. At first, it seems to work, and Nabnab begins to calm down. But then, in a shocking twist, BanBan pulls out a syringe filled with the same mysterious solution that made him hellish before. Without warning, he injects it directly into Nabnab. The effect is immediate. Nabnab transforms into his hellish form, a monstrous new version of himself. Now completely out of control, hellish Nabnab launches a devastating attack on Sir Dadadoo, creating a distraction that allows BanBan, Bittergiggle, and the player to escape into the garden. But their troubles are not over yet. A naughty one is following right behind them. They eventually reach 2 worker lift shafts. One of the lifts is operational, but the other is completely empty. Bittergiggle realizes something strange. The naughty ones actually laugh at his jokes. Understanding what he must do, he makes a heartbreaking decision. He jumps into the empty shaft, choosing to become their jester in order to distract them. With no time to mourn, BanBan and the player continue forward and board the second lift. But just as they think they are safe, Sir Dadadoo reappears and blocks their exit. This time, he reveals something truly terrifying. He has captured and notified nearly every member of the BanBan gang. They are no longer themselves, twisted into monstrous versions under his control. BanBan knows that the player is the only one left who can stop this nightmare. With no hesitation, he steps off the lift, positioning himself between the player and the approaching notified army. He knows he won't survive, but he has to buy time. He tells the player to find the surgeon and rescue everyone before it's too late. The player can only watch in horror as BanBan is attacked from all sides. The notified cases brutally tear into him, leaving deep scratch marks all over his body. His left eye is ripped out as he struggles to fight back, but the numbers are too overwhelming. In the final moments of BanBan 6, BanBan's screams echo through the facility as he is completely overpowered. The player has no choice but to escape as the screen fades to black. This is how BanBan 6 ends, one of the most tragic and emotional moments in the entire series. With BanBan gone, Sheriff Toadster missing, and the rest of the gang notified, the future looks darker than ever. The only hope left is for the player to find the surgeon. So now BanBan 7 game is start, and this time the player has one main goal: to find Syringeon, the key to defeating Sir Dadadoo and his notified army. However, things don't go as planned. When the player finally tracks down Syringeon, he is immediately hostile. He sees the player as a threat and refuses to help, but the player manages to turn the situation around by setting a trap. Syringeon falls right into it, and in a twist of fate, is attacked by one of Sir Dadadoo's naughty ones. Now, Syringeon is desperate. He begs the player to kill the naughty one, promising that if they do, he will no longer attack them and will even help defeat Sir Dadadoo. The player makes a choice and takes down the naughty one. Keeping his word, Syringeon stops fighting and reveals his plan. He believes that the only way to take down Sir Dadadoo is by using the power of jumbobosh. If they can find him, his sheer size and strength will be enough to defeat Sir Dadadoo and his minions. But there's a problem. Jumbobosh is missing. Syringeon sends the player out into the city to search for any information on his whereabouts. The search leads them to an old motel where a guest offers valuable information. However, they have one condition: the player must stop the horrible screaming coming from the top floor of the motel. Without much choice, the player heads upstairs and is met with a disturbing sight. A terrified citizen is pointing toward a room, screaming. And then, the door swings open. Standing there is none other than hellish, notified Bittergiggle. As he steps into the hallway, Bittergiggle looks directly at the player and speaks. "I remember you. You always hated my jokes." With that, the chase begins. Bittergiggle moves fast, forcing the player to escape by running across the rooftops of the city. The pursuit is relentless, and eventually, the player reaches a roof that is too far to jump across. It looks like there's no escape, but at the last second, Sheriff Toadster appears on the other side, holding out his arms. With no other option, the player takes the leap of faith. Toadster barely manages to catch them, pulling them to safety, but Bittergiggle is still right behind them. In a last-ditch effort, Toadster throws one of his famous toad stars, hitting Bittergiggle directly. The impact sends Bittergiggle tumbling off the roof. When he lands, something unexpected unexpected happens. He is de-notified. The evil corruption fades away and he returns to his original self. Toadster rushes down to him and cradles him in his arms. Bitter Giggle, now weak and barely able to move, looks up at Toadster and tells one final joke. As he finishes, he takes his last breath. With no time to grieve, the player leaves Toadster and Bitter Giggle behind and continues the search for Jumbo Josh. Unfortunately, he is nowhere to be found. Instead, the player discovers a rare Gavanium substance. Syringeon immediately recognizes its potential and comes up with a new plan. By combining a sample of Jumbo Josh's DNA with the surgeon's missing piece of the scepter, Syringeon creates a powerful lure designed to draw out Jumbo Josh. But before they can use it, Sir Dadadoo arrives with his notified army. Just as planned, he has taken the bait. As the notified cases surround the square, the surgeon smiles and delivers a single warning. You and your army are about to get knackered. The ground begins to shake. Down the road, a massive figure appears. Jumbo Josh has arrived. He beats his chest like a gorilla before charging into battle. The first target is Kittysaurus. Jumbo Josh punches her in the face with such force that she slams into a nearby courtyard wall. Bambolina tries to jump on him next, but Jumbo Josh easily grabs her and throws her across the city like a rag doll. Nabnalina takes a different approach, climbing all over his body in rapid circles to disorient him. Meanwhile, Tamataki and Chamataki rush forward and tackle him against the courtyard wall. The impact knocks Nabnalina off of him, sending her tumbling to the ground. Jumbo Josh quickly regains control. He lifts Tamataki and Chamataki above his head and hurls them into the distance. As they disappear, Opola Bird and Tarta Bird charge at him together, screaming, but Jumbo Josh barely reacts. He swipes them both away with a single punch, knocking them out instantly. Kittysaurus recovers and makes another attempt, charging at Jumbo Josh with full force, but he counters with a brutal move. He slams his fist straight into her mouth, then follows up with a devastating blow to the side of her head. With her momentarily stunned, he grabs hold of her upper and lower jaw and pulls them apart with all his strength. The impact breaks her jaw and knocks her unconscious. With his entire notified army defeated, Sir Dadadoo realizes he is completely outmatched. In a desperate attempt to survive, he tries to negotiate. Maybe we can talk about this. But Jumbo Josh isn't interested. Without a second thought, he grabs Sir Dadadoo and slams him to the ground. He then repeatedly punches him over and over, leaving his fate uncertain, either unconscious or dead. With the battle over, Jumbo Josh turns his attention to the scepter. Instead of using it, he picks it up and, to everyone's horror, swallows it whole. Syringeon immediately panics and screams, "No, don't eat it!" But it's too late. A massive purple explosion erupts from Jumbo Josh's mouth, engulfing everything in blinding light. The player loses consciousness. When they finally wake up, they are in a strange, unfamiliar sick room. The room contains Syringeon, who seems weakened, and a sick Stinger Flynn. Something about the atmosphere is unsettling. On the wall, there is a picture featuring several familiar characters from the game, but Stinger Flynn notices something unusual. There appears to be a hidden figure behind BanBan in the image. Curious, the player reaches out and begins tearing the picture. Syringeon immediately realizes what they are doing and tries to stop them, but the player refuses. As they peel away the layers, they reveal something shocking. Behind BanBan is a blue creature that looks similar to him. However, this version has no birthday hat and has yellow markings above and below its eyes. The moment the hidden creature is revealed, Syringeon reacts with pure hostility. Without hesitation, he launches a sudden attack on the player, and just like that, the screen fades to black, ending BanBan 7 on a massive cliffhanger. So now, BanBan 0 game is start. So yes, after BanBan 7 game, Euphoric Brothers released BanBan 0, because in BanBan 0 game, we are going to explore the origins of BanBan's kindergarten. The story begins when the player, this time a completely different character from previous games, wakes up in a small, unfamiliar room. This player is known as Case 4. Before they can even understand where they are, a voice comes from behind the door. The voice is strict and commanding, demanding that the player stay in the back of the room with their hands visible. Then, the door opens, and BanBan himself, or Case 6, steps inside. But instead of being hostile or aggressive, BanBan simply teases the player. He reveals that the player is new here, suggesting that they've just arrived in this mysterious place. After a short conversation, BanBan takes the player to another another area, a room that looks like a playground. Here, they meet BanBalina, or Case 7. She looks at the player and says something strange. Even if one of you weren't enough. This suggests that the player looks similar to BanBan, which could mean something much deeper about their connection. In order to make BanBalina a friend, the player needs to impress her. BanBan gives them a task to interact with the others in the room and build relationships. As the player explores, they meet several strange beings, including Gavanium blobs, mysterious creatures made of the same material seen in previous games. The player slowly befriends them and even manages to win BanBalina's approval by showing her a test. They scored an A+. They also give her a pink bow tie, the same one she wears in later chapters. This moment officially establishes their friendship. After forming these bonds, BanBan, BanBalina, the Gavanium blobs, and the player start playing a game of hide-and-seek. The player is chosen as the seeker, and just as the game begins, a new presence enters the room. It's Syringan. Without warning, Syringan grabs one of the Gavanium blobs. BanBan immediately steps in, demanding that Syringan leave. But instead of arguing, Syringan starts talking about BanBan's involvement in certain research projects. He claims that BanBan has abilities he refuses to acknowledge. Then, Syringan says something chilling. You can control it. You know you can. He is referring to BanBan's ability to transform into a demon. After delivering this cryptic message, Syringan leaves, taking the captured Gavanium blob with him. The encounter shakes BanBan, and he decides to leave with the player to comfort BanBalina, who is terrified by what just happened. After a long, tense day, everyone goes to sleep. But in the middle of the night, BanBan wakes the player up. He tells them he has a surprise for them and asks them to follow him. As they move through the halls, they meet Truffletooth, or Case 43, a small creature that can be used as a flashlight. Eventually, they reach a large door, but it won't open. BanBan calls for his best friend, Nabnab, or Case 8, to help. Nabnab arrives, pries the door open, and then joins the group. Behind this door is yet another, much larger door, but in order to open it, 5 people must stand on separate tiles at the same time. Since there aren't enough of them, and Truffletooth is too light to activate a tile, BanBan sends the player to find more people. The player searches the facility and eventually finds Bittergiggle, or Case 17, trapped in a room filled with stun gas. After stopping the gas flow and saving Bittergiggle, he agrees to help. However, one more person is needed. Before the player can continue searching, Kittysaurus, or Case 26, appears and offers her assistance. With enough people gathered, they all return to the door and stand on the tiles. Before they enter, BanBan gives the player a special position, right in the center, directly in front of the door. He tells them that this surprise is specifically for them. The door slowly opens, revealing a massive, demonic creature. This is Ramamba, a horrifying, ram-headed, worm-like beast. Without hesitation, it lunges at the player, intending to eat them. But at the last second, Nabnab throws himself forward, pushing the player out of the way and sacrificing himself in the process. Ramamba devours Nabnab and disappears deeper into the facility. Kittysaurus, unwilling to let Nabnab die, rushes after Ramamba. Bittergiggle follows, and the player has no choice but to chase after them. Their pursuit leads them back to the playground area, but it's too late. Ramamba devours both Kittysaurus and Bittergiggle right in front of the player. Before the player can react, BanBan and Truffletooth arrive. BanBan reaches for the player, urging them to come closer. But as they move toward him, the ground beneath them collapses. The trio falls deep underground, landing in a dungeon-like area. BanBan quickly regains his composure and tells the player to take Truffletooth and explore the caves. He will go in a different direction, and they will meet back at the same place later. As the player moves through the dark caves, something follows them. Ramamba is still hunting. The player runs, trying to escape, but they reach a dead end. Just when it seems like there's no way out, BanBan reappears, but not in his normal form. He has transformed into his demonic state. Without hesitation, he engages Ramamba in a brutal fight. The battle is intense, and as it rages on, they eventually end up back in the playground room. In a shocking turn of events, BanBan supposedly kills Ramamba, and all the characters that were eaten, Nabnab, Kittysaurus, and Bittergiggle, are released. However, they are unconscious, lying lifelessly on the ground. With the battle over, BanBan turns to the player and suggests something unexpected, a game of hide-and-seek. He points at Bittergiggle, who is still unconscious, and says he will be the seeker. The player, trusting BanBan, agrees and follows him to a special hiding spot. But the moment they step inside, BanBan locks them in. This is when the shocking truth is revealed. The player of BanBan Zero is actually Flumbo, the same character seen trapped in the closet in the BanBan 8 trailer. BanBan, now in almost the same condition as in that trailer, stares at the locked door, leaving the player trapped in darkness as the game ends.